Come.
Just a slight tangent on that.
This is far too much of a tangent. Just a brief interruption.
Can I also say one more thing on this?
But we also need to impose some rules. Like, we can't just have 20-minute tangents over a text.
Come on. That's just refusal to consider the circumstances. I'm not going to entertain that, Joe.
This conversation is not a good one, I think. Do we argue much?
No, we keep them inside.
Let it fester.
See, I thought this was a ridiculous text until I read the top three, and then I thought, you know what? I'd actually debate that with you. It is an interesting... Sorry, it's not an interesting question, but...
Let's make that clear.
I love the sound of a snooker referee counting up the score.
Hello, you're welcome along. A Slight Tangent is coming at you. Slight Tangent at offtheball.com is where you can get us. Very happy to say, as usual. To my right, we have Will O'Callaghan. Hello, Will.
Good evening, Joe.
We have Michael McCarthy. Hello.
Hi, Joe.
Dr. O'D is in the house once again. Hello, Arthur.
Hi, Joe.
Long-suffering Dr. O'D tolerates us.
Why am I long suffering?
Because you're to tolerate us.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
We're back to one in a row. We're back to one in a row. We're Dublin, basically. This is how Dublin feel.
No, that's
Yeah. All-Ireland champions.
Yeah, we had 10 in a row, and now it's one, so we're back again. Did we have a good reason for missing last week?
You weren't here.
You weren't here. Felt it'd be wrong to
That's
do
a
without
good
you.
reason, in fairness. Agreed.
Do you see yourself as the Cluxton? Is that how you regard yourself?
Grumpy, a man apart.
Yeah, it's 11 in a row for you, much like it's 7 in a row for Cluxton. Everybody else is back to 1.
That's true. Yeah. So we've had... you don't look at the downside here, but too many emails.
Well, look, I made a joke at the news round about, we won't read most of them or whatever because there was so many. It's genuine, like, just real moment here, folks. For us to get that many emails for this slot that we started arsing around with a year ago, whatever, is unbelievable. It's unbelievable how engaged people are, how much they want to contribute, how much they want to do. And we do actually, well, I do anyway, I do actually read them all and we think about them all and we talk about them all. Some of them suit a conversation on the show and some of them don't, but genuinely appreciate them all.
I did the maths of the number of emails times the average word count, and I figured I could have instead read Arthur O'D's thesis on Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
You know?
Of which many of our readers have read, and many of them mentioned it in the emails.
Oh my God. Several compliments in about your thesis.
They're reading it, Arthur.
I haven't just downloaded it. Someone did say it was very well written.
Yeah, what's that mean?
So someone also called you Bob Dylan's doctor.
I did enjoy the context of that email as well, where they said, I've no interest in Bob Dylan, but I still read his thesis.
Oh,
That's the ultimate compliment.
That's nice. Well, how many downloads are you up to?
I don't know.
Come on.
You have to
Come
check.
on.
Sincerely don't
Will,
know.
where's your laptop? You normally check these things.
Have a
Checking the
look.
break.
You must have sailed past 500 now, have you?
Yeah, I presume so.
You're the talk at DCU.
Oh, God. Oh, not at all.
Will I crack on?
She may as well.
Let's start with something light and quick. Somebody... did we talk about what I would call my book?
Yeah, it came up at some stage.
Yeah, okay.
We had some suggested titles, I believe.
They weren't great, I didn't think. As much as Paul's email is appreciated, he says, "Hi lads, short time, first time. We do appreciate the short time. Really enjoy the chats. Keeps me in touch with home as I'm now living in Australia. Title for the Joe Molloy book as recently discussed." I've no memory of this, by the way. My autobiography or like a...
You're just on to the next one, aren't you?
tell-all.
You're the next show.
Option 1.
Tell all. What are you going to tell?
Well, it could be about me. The good, the bad and the rugby. Or the golf.
Golf, the bad, and the rugby. Yeah.
And option 2 is the golf, the bad and the ugly.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul. P.S. If anyone needs a place to stay for the upcoming 2025 Lions Tour or the 2027 Rugby World Cup, we have 2 spare rooms.
Wow.
Listen, we'll keep that on file, Paul. We scoff now, but we might be emailing you.
Is Airbnb basically hiding as an email into the show?
I'll push on. Luke says, "Hi, Joan lads. LTFT living in Canada now. A lot of
all expats here this week. Yeah.
I appreciate you guys keeping me informed on all Irish sport." I'm not sure that's what we're doing here, but we'll take the compliment.
I presume he means overall. He certainly doesn't
enough.
mean this segment.
Watching the quarterback documentary on Netflix, Peyton Manning called it the hardest position in sport. As you'll pardon a slight tangent, is this any good? I haven't been...
First episode and a half.
Yeah.
It was all right. I mean, it's pretty interesting.
All right.
6 of 8 completed here. I think it's a compelling enough watch, yeah. It's particularly to get so close to Mahomes was the one that surprised me.
The tones of voices there suggested like
it's fine.
3-star or more than anything.
We've such high standards for sport. I haven't seen this yet, but there's such high standards for sports documentaries at the moment that there's these things that 10 years ago would have blown us out of the water. Don't even bat an eyelid at them.
That's true.
You're almost wary of saying something's good, even if you're enjoying it.
I think if a lot of 30 for 30s came out now, we'd be like, meh.
Yeah.
Because actually, the McEnroe one got recommended by a lot of people, and then I watched it this week.
I haven't seen that.
I was like,
I saw a little bit of it. It's
okay.
not new, like a couple of years old, yeah.
oh, I thought it was new.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of something else. So.
It's him walking around New York in darkness. That's the kind of motif that runs throughout. Have you seen that?
No, I don't think so.
He's a compelling figure. He's really interesting, but I didn't feel the documentary was, you got to watch this. It was, as you said, I think 10 years ago it would have been 4 stars, and now it's watered down to 3 stars maybe. A good 3 stars, which is what I'm sensing from you two.
Yeah, I think they got 3 pretty compelling characters. It is very slick, so straight away you're very mindful of this has been very carefully curated in terms of what we're actually getting to see. But to see Mahomes, who's possibly the best to do it at the moment, playing quarterback, and seeing the behind the scenes from him is particularly intriguing, especially when the Chiefs have started the season poorly and you see a guy who's genuinely starting to doubt their new attacking system and maybe doubt himself a little bit. And they've got Mariota, who was a former Heisman winner when he was a student, and that's interesting in itself. And Kirk Cousins, who had to go in and was behind Robert Griffin Jr., effectively gets traded into a team he didn't expect to get traded to, has to wait his time, then injuries give him a chance. And he's a guy who seems to be plagued by self-doubt, but is also like the ultimate everyman, down to the point that his wife is dressing him in very, very cheap clothes as he goes, compared to the guys who are coming in very, very slick going in. So they picked 3 good characters. I think that's probably the best thing for it.
Does it give you an insight as to what they do, like how difficult the job is? Like, is it in? I haven't seen this.
A little bit. You do get an idea of it. But they are kind of intent, and they've got some amazing footage, and they want to make sure you see it.
Okay.
Like the footage of them in game time is remarkable. It really is kind of, it's pretty much on, it's like pitch level, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're really seeing, and it's when like they'll obviously take little times when they highlight different bits and pieces, but when you see like how hard they're getting hit.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think that comes into the Peyton Manning thing about that hard job.
Yeah.
It's like you got seconds and then it's just flattened.
Well, I'll pick up.
Can I just go tangent off the tangent for a second though? Did anyone see, because just on the quarterback thing I was thinking, did you see this Premier League series, summer series or whatever in America? And have you not seen any of it? No. So basically it's all the Villa, Newcastle, Brentford and Chelsea or something, and they are, there's one player, it's on Twitter, I mean, like he's one player wearing like a chest cam.
Oh yeah.
And so Tielemans was doing it and in the Villa Newcastle game and came off the bench, and it's really unbelievable how fast the pace is. You just don't expect it. And this is in a pre-season game. You can imagine what it's like in a Premier League game or a top level Premier League Champions League game or something like that. But you're thinking like, how does he even get, it's remarkable footage. And I think the more we see that kind of stuff, I think we could do with an appreciation of how difficult the game football can be. Maybe at the highest level, because we all play it, we all think it's a simple game.
I'm somehow suspicious of that the camera would make it seem much more disorientating and harder to predict what's going on.
Because it's coming from your chest rather than your face, where you turn your head, you're not turning your chest. But it's the same time, it's the pace I'm talking about though.
No, I get the pace. I'd say maybe even like an AstroTurf game of good players might seem far more impressive than it is.
Possibly, yeah.
Anyway, no more tangents off tangents. I'm just curious, given what Peyton Manning said about quarterback being the hardest position in sport, what are your thoughts on what is the hardest position in sport? Quarterback would be up there, but a goalkeeper, particularly in hurling, would surely have to be considered. Also, a slight tangent, I'm no Bob Dylan fan, but Arthur's thesis is very well written. Keep up the great work. Thanks, Luke.
Yeah. Why are you reading it? Why are you reading it if you're not a fan?
Go screw yourself, Luke, says
Jesus, because he's a fan of you.
He likes you.
That's more worrying.
You have a lot of hardcore fans, actually. What nickname should we give fans of Arthur? The Odeasters.
The Odeasters. Arthurites.
The Arthurites. Touch of class there. Arthur's a great name, actually, isn't it? It really
no more tangents off tangents, he says.
I like Arthur's name.
It's a great name.
It's
a super name, Arthur. Yeah, I really like it.
Well, yeah, it came from it's my father's name.
Is it? Yeah.
Thanks, I got it off my father.
Okay.
I don't know where it came from though. It's because it's slightly unusual, but not too unusual. It's not.
There's a timeless quality to it, I feel.
I suppose so. I mean.
Come here. What's the hardest position in sport anyway?
Oh God, it is very hard to judge. Like it depends. Like like I presume we kind of mean what's the hardest sport.
No.
So the hardest position. So like in the peloton, like is that a position or like?
Oh, that's a good point.
I kind of because I think cycling is like every time you see it, it's the most brutal. Just incredibly. The strain it must take on you.
That's a very honourable good mention actually. Because my instinct when I first glanced at the email was hurling goalkeeper.
Yeah, but they don't get hurt. I mean, there's a fear around them getting hurt, but you very rarely ever see like they like basically never get. Certainly, I'm only really watching intercounty level, granted, but they're not getting hit.
I think Joe Quaid might beg to differ.
I was going to say that's
one exception.
Yeah,
that's one exception. I don't. That doesn't happen often. Like they're pretty unscathed.
Yeah, I think the.
But to make a save, I mean, okay, so there's the toll on your physical health, but then actually, if the standard is Murphy and the Kilkenny's goal save, I mean,
but you're not expected to do it. So say if Owen Murphy concedes that goal to Peter Duggan,
there's no issue.
Nobody is talking about it. Nobody ever mentions Owen Murphy in that sentence. Okay. So it's again, I think expectation is a huge amount. I think the endurance thing is an interesting point by Arthur, but for me, that's almost a slightly different thing. I think in some ways skill and I think it has to be a mixture of everything a little bit. For me, I think it's quarterback by a mile, I have to say.
Oh, do you?
Because if you think of how much has to be in the mind of a quarterback, how much, and this is almost why I was thinking of the elements thing, because we have had like eye level footage. Like it's like you've got 10 at least, 6'10" men standing in front of you as you try to see a field. Like, did you ever even play Madden? Like, from a quarterback, but it's impossible. You can't see anything. It all happens too quick. And obviously that's like a million times easier than the actual game would be. I think the amount they have to memorize, the amount of plays they need to know, like you're talking like hundreds and hundreds of plays that they know by a code.
525 had to be memorized in off season when the coach changed.
Yeah,
that's insane.
That's the playbook, and you need to know that basically by a code name, each one, and that needs to everyone everywhere has to that's where everyone in the field is going to be at a certain point. I presume though, when you're off the field, you can have a quick catch up and say, well, what are we going to do in the net? You don't actually have 525 to hand at any moment, do you?
Well, I'd say the offensive coordinator has a big role in, say, picking the plays, but everything goes through the quarterback. And in Cousin's case, he was literally going home and watching hours of footage, and he was looking at an iPad to check all the plays. I'm just talking about how much it changed because they went to a totally different system in the season that he was coming into. Like, I had a little bit of an appreciation of how much quarterbacks get hit from watching this as well, because in one of the games, Mahomes is microphoned up. Sorry, slight spoiler for Arthur, I think in episode 2 or 3.
I won't be finishing it.
There you go. I think they're playing Vegas, and what happens is their number 89 continues to try and wind up Mahomes through the whole game. So even after Mahomes has got a pass off, he just comes in, gives him a little nudge, tries to knock him over without even sacking him, and it just continually for about 2 quarters this continues on, and it just fires up Mahomes in the second half.
It's hardly the thing that makes the worst position, the hardest position in sport. I don't, not to add to it, but like they do get, one of the things is a like an element of bravery, is that like if you wait that last second, you stand in the pocket and you're going to get this 300-pound man hitting you full blast, not a nudge, because you need that extra second to make sure your guy gets down the field and stuff like that. That happens all the time. Like they're tough, and they're the amount of acumen that needed to play the position. I can't think of anything that's comparable. I think everything else within a team sport, especially,
rugby's comparable.
Does an out half take as many knocks?
A far quicker game. And far more relentless. Like you are ultimately in American football, you are stopping and starting the whole time.
Far fewer options, though.
But like that doesn't, it still doesn't, I appreciate that, but I feel with the thing with the options, that's a little bit of a kind of a red herring. As you're saying, like you might know 525, but like how many do you actually call in a game?
And now half's the most important a player on a rugby field. He is not the be all and end all in the way the quarterback does. If like Tom Brady has like is behind in a Super Bowl with a minute left and no timeouts, there's still an expectation that it's all about one person.
No,
other people will make plays, but it's all about one person. If that one person doesn't do it, then it won't happen.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't think that's the case in any other sport. It's not the case in rugby. Like if you can do that without your out half, maybe they can't drop the goal, but that doesn't happen. That's not in every circumstance.
It is the case in, if we not to bring it back, like, and I wouldn't know much about it, like as the mechanics of it, but like it is the case in cycling.
Yeah.
there's a leader of that generally who will have to basically his performance will dictate what the rest of the team.
There is a chance we're underestimating the skill level in cycling. I mean, to go
That's
down.
fair. Yeah, I didn't mean to just dismiss it.
Because I would sort of wrongly, right, hold my hands up, but I would wrongly dismiss somebody running around a track doing a marathon as the skill quality there. I don't feel is mind blowing or comparable to what a quarterback does. But I think actually riding down a mountain at 50, 60k around bends. A cliff is that way and another cliff is that way, and there's 30 lads around you and it's breakneck.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
that's ferocious skill.
Possible to
Formula 1 driver. Anyway, would you dismiss that?
Did enter my head. Yeah.
Do you know what's a funny thing? There's different prisms you can look at this through. You could almost go, well, if you were to take Johnny or Mary Lehman and say, well, you have a year to try and get good at this sport. I'd sort of fancy my chances to become not an embarrassment of a quarterback of a year's training. But if you said to me, you have a year now to become a good gymnast, the results would be cataclysmic.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's fair, because I think there's different things that might suit different body types and different experiences and what you go up as a kid. I suppose I'm looking at it from a point of if you're a quarterback, what's the hardest thing to become an elite or a good quarterback? And for me, I think that might be the biggest jump. I don't know if there's as big a jump between the 20th person on the grid and the first person on the grid in Formula 1, though I would imagine it is a bit of a steep enough deficit. Yeah. So maybe that's right. Maybe it's a different way of looking at it. Maybe what's the hardest thing to actually do? I will probably learn how to learn the plays and throw the ball.
Can I give you one?
Yeah.
One? Boxer.
Yeah. Again, I think it depends on what you've come from and what your mentality is but it'd be one of the hardest ones for me, I would imagine.
I mean, jockey.
Oh geez, national hunt jockeys. How did they do it?
Sorry, that's a good shout.
Don't forget about what your life is around being a jockey as well. You're
24/7.
That's danger, expectation, everything kind of combined into one.
Yeah.
And a relentless season.
Relentless body management. That's insane.
That's a late contender. Are we ready to move on?
Well, we don't have an answer.
We don't have an answer.
We didn't give it any pre-thought.
I was far more adamant at the start than I am at the end, which is probably a good sign.
Yeah.
So basically the answer is retain jockey for a top stable.
Imagine being a retained jockey for a rubbish stable.
Just a journeyman jockey
as an NFL quarterback.
So where will we go next? Will I take an ad break or will I go for one more?
Sure, you know what? Take an ad break and we'll regroup.
Go on. So Aidan, you're next up in the emails. Excuse me. This sort of bubbled up, I think, around David Clifford and who the footballer of the year is. Aidan must have sent this a couple of weeks ago when our streak was alive and well. While watching the Sunday Games Hurling Team of the Year discussion, I found myself in discussion with my friends on the selection of TJ Reid over Tony Kelly, as I thought the merits of Reid's inclusion were of a different standard to Kelly. So the merits of Reid's inclusion were of a different standard to the ones that Kelly was held to. So Aidan says, I will admit from the outside I'm a Clare man, but even still, on the raw face of it, we're comparing Tony Kelly, who scored 422 from play, to TJ Reid, who scored 213 from play, 2-6 of which came against Antrim and Westmeath. Now, I've no problem conceding that Tony Kelly didn't have his best year, but do we hold certain players to a different standard based on their previous performances? Whether Kelly had his best, average or a bad season, he should still be assessed on his performances alone in comparison to the field, not himself. I'm sure there are numerous other examples like this in sport. Thanks in advance if you do raise this discussion. I love the segment. Keep up the good work. Regards, Aidan. It's an interesting one. I think with Clifford it's kind of bubbled up this week as well. Colin Boyle, Darren O'Sullivan said he is the best player this year, and you can't compare him to how he did last year. You just have to say he was the best, for instance. And Aidan here is making the same point when it comes to Tony Kelly. Yeah,
I'm not sure on that one.
Are you not?
On which one?
The Kelly Reid one.
Why?
Well, I suppose he's taken away his 2 goals. 3 of Tony Kelly's goals came against Dublin in a hammering, in a one-off kind of, a one-way. Complete mismatch.
Well, take them away then, and then Dublin, who are a far better team than Antrim Westmeath.
Are they?
I think it's you have to mention, and in fairness, Aidan, in your email,
well, then TJ Reid only has 5 points.
You should have mentioned it, Aidan. Aidan should have mentioned it as a Clare man. He's tried to pull a fast one there. He got three goals against Dublin.
He got 3 goals against Dublin. So take away that, and what do you have? He got 3-4, I think, from play against Dublin.
Then you have 118.
118 versus 5 points.
Yeah, but like,
I'm sorry, TJ Reid played against Dublin as well, and he didn't score anything.
You've removed all of TJ's points from frees there as well.
yeah. I mean,
It's a bit disingenuous.
I agree. I agree. From play is
it's
the
not
important
from
thing.
play. They're doing different jobs. Like Tony Kelly
job
had a
did
far
Tony-
better year than. Sorry, TJ Reid had a far better year than Tony
What
Kelly.
job did Tony Kelly do in the semi-final?
Well, you tell me. You a more passionate view.
No, but I'm
you-
saying
you-
this, but there's no analysis of it. No, I look, I brought this up as an example when we were talking about Clifford last night. Funnily enough, it was brought up on the Hurling pod as well a couple of weeks ago, which I referenced, and then the emailer, which we hadn't seen at that stage, has said it as well. It's a very, very valid point, because, for example, there was literally no. Jackie Tyrrell dismissively said on the Sunday game when Joe Canning was like, "Where the hell is Tony Kelly on this team?" And he said he had a terrible game against Kilkenny. He did not have a terrible game against Kilkenny. He set up a goal. He was involved in a huge amount of scores. He only got a point from play. He was fouled about 3 times and targeted by Kilkenny. And when
Sure, frees don't count.
winning frees definitely count.
Winning frees.
Well, how many frees?
scoring,
how many
scored
frees does Reid
frees.
win? We don't have those statistics to hand. So it's very disingenuous again.
Okay,
to pull them
fine,
up.
fine. But what I'm saying to you is,
Can't say
Kelly
it's that
also took on a completely different role in the second half, because Ryan Taylor went off injured, and Clare always have a deep line player that comes and picks up the ball. He had 19 possessions in that match, which is a huge amount of possessions for someone who had a terrible game. His radar was slightly off. I don't think his shooting was good all year. I don't think it was his best year. But to the point of, is he being judged on the standards of everybody else, or is he being judged on the standards of a guy who can set the world on fire and score 14 points from play? I think that is indisputable. TJ Reid has been judged on the fact that he is a all-time legend who still has a huge impact in games, but he's not having the impact of someone like Kelly.
He is.
He isn't.
100% is. In the Leinster
Look at
final,
all
who
the
was the guy?
stats.
In the Leinster final, who was leading that charge right at the end to get that ball back on his own, or like right up into the corner from the thing? The first person that played the pass over, he had a looped pass into him that didn't quite make it to Reid. It made its way back out. I don't know exactly who the players were. At the left corner back area, Galway. He leads the charge for it. They get that ball back. It breaks out. Kilkenny win.
Yeah.
That's him. That's him.
You've left out about 7 players who were
but
involved
he's
in that
leading.
play.
Well, it's a team game. He's leading it though.
One of the biggest issues here is we're comparing scores to determine whether a player's played better or not.
Yeah.
So in TJ Reid's case,
Well, he also had possessions. He had more possessions than Kelly than Reid in the semi-final as well, where Reid was lauded and didn't score from play.
Is this definitively though Reid or Kelly?
Well, I mean, you can say Cian Lynch. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
I think Kelly gets the All-Star over Reid, and that's why this has become such a discussion. And for a lot of people,
He
it
won't.
seems you don't think he will.
No, Reid will 100% win the All-Star, but I'm saying that that's wrong. But let's move on to away from the Clare thing, because I think that's.
I've had final word. Let's steer it away now.
No. I'm saying let's not get we're in the weeds on something very specific. But I think my point is though that if somebody has those kind of blow you away moments, I feel it's not even that we're openly saying that I'm judging him, we know what he can do and he didn't do that today. I think we're not analysing them properly. I think we're not looking for the other stuff that they're doing. TJ Kelly was also apparently one of the arguments was that Reid does more kind of defensive work and hooking and blocking and stuff like that without any kind this was said, I can't remember who said this, but there was no mention of the fact that Kelly stopped 2 goals against Cork and people at the time are saying he's probably he's probably shouldn't be back there, but he had a hook an unbelievable, one of the best pieces of skill of the season. It's just, again, I do want to move off that specific example.
Now that you really
But I can't.
run it home.
No, but I think it's a good example for this conversation.
fair enough.
And it's and David Clifford's absolutely the same. I do think that in the All-Ireland final, I think if he wasn't as good as he was, he wouldn't have been trying some of those scores. I think that Kerry needed him to have a bit of magic. It wasn't the case of glory hunting or playing hero ball or anything like that. I don't think that Kerry had other options to get going unless David Clifford kicked one of those scores. So it didn't work for him on the day, but the actual play in getting into those points weren't terrible. He still got 2 points. He had a bit of magic to set up a goal, but because it wasn't David Clifford, what we saw in last year's All-Ireland final, he was described as having, what did Paul Flynn say?
He got cooked.
He got
Torched, smoked.
Smoked.
Was he smoked?
was the word,
Sorry.
yeah. Cooked, I thought was a little bit.
Some kind of arson.
No,
anyway.
but that's obviously what's in his head. Like that, he's saying that he got
It was in
smoked.
his head at like 1 o'clock on Monday morning.
You got to give Paul Flynn a pass.
I do. I'm not criticising Paul Flynn.
can I,
I'm saying that
the-
that's the type of reaction that's out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
No, like it's an overly harsh critique of Clifford. Definitely. The more I think about it, so Colin Boyle and Darren Sullivan straight away were, it's Clifford. The more I think about it, like the final, you couldn't criticise him overly. He was a bit ambitious in some of his point taking. He didn't have his shooting boots. You certainly would have to say he also made a big contribution in the final. So you can't dismiss the final performance. The semi-final was like epic. I mean, epic. That's why there was such a Clifford build-up to the final. It was the best individual performance in a single game anybody has put in all season.
Quarterfinal was a bit subdued though, wasn't it?
He didn't have his shooting boots on again. And then, frankly, I have to be honest, I just dismiss the rest of the season for almost everyone. Like, it's such an irrelevance to me. It's knockout. I give it very minor weighting. Like, I don't know how you pick out what a Dublin player did when they're putting 5-20 on Louth and say, oh, well, that's amazing. That's not their fault, obviously. They have to beat Louth. But I just don't give it much weighting versus what they do in knockout stages. The more I think about it, yesterday I was Fenton, and a big part of me still leaned towards Fenton. The argument being, you can just tell he drove this thing. In the second half against Mayo, he was immense when they needed him to be immense, and in the last 15 minutes against Monaghan, when the game was in the mix, it was Fenton who scored a couple of points and put the thing to bed. And then obviously on Sunday, I just thought he was spectacular. You know, and the way to saunter up in the 65th minute and score his second point of the game, clipping it over with, you know, a touch of panache sort of counts for me from 40 metres. Or
Do you think he was better than Howard Mannion then?
I mean, look, Howard got basically every Cluxton kick out went to Howard, and so Howard was brilliant. Did I think he was better than Mannion? I didn't think anybody was almost better than Mannion in the final, but I still just thought he was immense as part of his body of work, and Mannion obviously just was extraordinary in that one game. But 48 hours on, I think the 2023 year is Cluxton's. I think Cluxton is the reason Dublin won the All-Ireland. And it doesn't concede a goal in the entire championship until the final. And then we know what he did on Sunday. Kicked the opening score, kicked 2 points, 100% kick-outs. And like, the more you watch his kick-outs and the pressure at times that he was under, that's absolutely off the charts. The calm he exuded was contagious in a good way in that Dublin camp. And I would suspect off the pitch, we've heard enough now to know the extent to which his return would have just copper fastened attitudes and standards. And I do take in, I give him bonus points because he's 41 and because he was away for 2 years. I think that adds to the achievement. And so, like, as time passes, I think, what more could a goalkeeper have done? I think it's outrageous, and in 10 years' time, 2023 will be remembered as the year Cluxton came back and steered quarterback like Dublin to an All-Ireland. And so the more I think about it, of course he's the footballer of the year. It's absolutely nuts what he just did. It's one of the greatest football seasons in history. It's like, there's never going to be a season like it from any footballer. When are you going to see that again? He's the footballer of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's that.
You've undercut my passion there a little bit.
I'm sorry.
You've taken the steam out of it there a touch, Arthur, which I like. It was Cluxton-esque what you did there. I was losing the head of it and you just said, calm down.
You know, I know what you're saying. I don't know if I feel that if he wasn't there, Dublin probably still make an All-Ireland final. Probably. I mean,
They win it.
Yeah,
well, they might not win it. So, like,
you're making an Ireland finals like level par for Dublin.
So that's what I mean. So it can't be a very remarkable year if they've won. If this is the 9th they've won in about what is it now? About 13, 14 years or
2011,
years. You know,
12, yeah.
Yeah, 12, 13 years. So it's not that remarkable by definition, I suppose, what has happened. But I just I'd wonder why you wouldn't lean towards Mannion. I mean, surely what he did was more remarkable in terms of individual performance.
Too much weighting towards one game.
But if we're kind of accepting, Dublin probably would have got there anyway.
I know, but I think you do have to reflect the year at large a little bit, you know, and I think Mannion didn't do enough in the other games.
I think a lot of the players voting will be very seduced by the narrative that you've just given there. And ultimately it's the players who vote for...
Yeah, only vote on the shortlist though.
Yeah.
So we need the journals need to get in there first.
I'm sort of missing the James McCarthy thing. I know
very
Paul
very
Flynn's
consistent all season though.
just a consistent performer.
Consistently
wasn't he?
very good though.
But
I didn't have the best final, but I thought he was really good up until the final.
Is there any degree though of it being like akin to when Ryan Giggs got Footballer of the Year, that there's a kind of a 9 All-Irelands. By the
You're
way,
doing that a bit too.
So did Cluxton. I am doing that a bit. I know, but I just want to tease out the McCarthy thing. To what extent is there a degree of, hang on, we need to recognise this guy's career. He's been maybe the best player for like a decade plus. For all those reasons, you just give it to him, not out of sentiment, but out of...
No, he was player of the match in the Mayo game, wasn't he? I think
he was, yeah.
Definitely got one or two player of the matches during the season.
Oh, fair enough then.
Again, like Fenton has been playing at a ridiculously high level, and I think they're the three that probably get shortlisted.
He's also someone that, funny enough, in the kind of argument that he didn't have a great final, it's being, you know, he's been measured on his standards. You know, I do think it applies to everybody, especially the greats, because I'll tell you why, James McCarthy, for be it the type of fouling he was doing and maybe got a little bit lucky, or the bat downs, a lot of different things he was doing, he mightn't have had like highlight moments, but I thought he was very influential in the game.
Yeah,
you know, well, a lot of that was fouling.
So you think the shortlist will omit David Clifford?
I think there's a chance for it.
Oh, well, that's a disgrace then.
Not a hope.
That is a disgrace.
You think it'll be 3 dubs?
I think it could be, yeah.
No, it never is.
It can't be. You can't make, like, Clifford did too many
great things. He only won the final by 2 points, you know.
Like,
I also think, by the way, it's very unfair on Clifford, A, if he's not on the shortlist, and B, that he's not a serious contender for it, because he actually got on more possessions than people might think within the final itself. Like, he has a hand in 1 goal and 3 points in the final. He kicks a couple of difficult scores and then misses some other ones that he would normally have got.
I know, like, if Clifford was to be given Footballer of the Year, Darren O'Sullivan and Colin Boyle say it's a no-brainer. As I said, I have no problem with that. If he gets Footballer of the Year, I'll say, yeah, okay.
It'll be Clifford, McCarthy and Fenton will be the 3 nominees.
So I'm barking up the wrong tree.
I don't know, like, I mean, it's a compelling argument. The 100% kickouts, lads, I feel like we haven't made enough of that. Now maybe that's as much down to Kerry as anything else, but like when Dublin pushed up, like, you know, Shane Ryan did struggle with kickouts in the first half, you know, but maybe Cluxton didn't have those challenges.
Kerry did push up big time.
Yeah,
big time.
Well, it was like Brian Howard has as much to do with that as well then as Cluxton, but I do feel that doesn't happen without Cluxton there.
There's not a chance.
No offence to Evan Comfort or any other goalkeeper in the history of the game. You know, that's how much of we're not talking about Evan Comfort here. Like, you know.
So you don't think it'll be Cluxton in the 3 best?
I haven't heard it talked about, and maybe this starts as we've got a bit of time.
We're taking him for granted here.
I think that might be fair. I know it's one of the best stories ever, you know.
And I guess it's an interesting question. Where does like the story come into your assessment of their performances? I mean, should we be looking at should you look at the Cliffords and not take into account what they've gone through personally this year? Is it wrong to do that? Is it right to do that? I sort of feel that you know, that is part of the backdrop to their performances. I don't think it should be just like, I'm going to as a player view all of these players and blank out what their jersey is and blank out what their faces are and not know anything about where they're coming from and just judge it on the performances. I don't know if that's right either.
It's interesting. I don't know is the truth on that one. I don't know, but to come back after 2 years away and be the age he is, whatever about like going away for 2 years when you're 26, but when you're 40, and then to come back and to be in the shape he's in and to have the, like, you go until the last minute. You know, I know he's a goalkeeper, guys, but he's running up and kicking frees, like, do you know what I mean? And he's involved in a lot of plays. I don't know, he's a remarkable athlete, and I think we don't probably talk about him in that way enough.
No. Who is your Footballer of the Year then, everyone?
I think McCarthy. Just so consistently excellent.
Yeah. Oh, fair enough.
I think that's the strong argument from.
I have to hold my hands up. That's just passed me by a bit somehow. So I'm probably wrong.
You like headline hits and you like your Cluxton.
I don't know what it is. There could be a degree of taking McCarthy for granted too, you know.
So you want it to be Cluxton, or you think it'll be Cluxton?
Be a good story.
It would.
I don't know how good the interview would be.
You couldn't talk down any. Like, I wouldn't talk down any of them. I'd have no problem with Cluxton. I'd bow to the sense of McCarthy that people have. I definitely could really see Fenton getting it. And ultimately, if they said, you know what, Clifford, for the 15 moments of absolute magic, I couldn't get too upset. Arthur?
Oh, Fenton. Yeah, no brainer.
No brainer.
For me.
It's a bloody brainer now, come on. Establish that.
I haven't a clue.
I don't think anyone would argue against Fenton.
I feel like I'm getting convinced by everyone's arguments, which suggests to me I don't have a strong opinion.
It's Fenton or Cluxton for me.
Yeah, he was so good. He was so good when it was in those crucial moments. That free he got, that score he got with Monaghan.
Yeah.
I don't know, was the one where did he get on his left, where he's almost gone off balance, or he just kind of whatever. I'd have to look it back. Whatever way he hits it, and you're like, it just almost he doesn't even break stride, and just keeps going back up.
And again, back to the headline moments. That his general play is
class.
He never makes a mistake. His foot passing is the most underrated foot passer in the game. He's back there doing Trojan work in defence. He's barging people out of it. He's everybody's coming at him.
I would say the only thing that would suggest, we hinted at it last night, that would mean he's 1-3, which is obviously would be saying with the record,
first person ever to
first
do it.
person ever. So that might put people off a little bit if it's a voting.
In some ways, I think
know
it'd be
that.
no harm for people to kind of realise that Brian Fenton is one of the best footballers we've ever seen. I do feel like he's always talked about as one of the best of his day, but it's like as if he hasn't reached that echelon in general conversation yet, and he's clearly there.
He's our Jack O'Shea. He is.
I remember that discussion with your conversation with Liam Hayes.
Like, Hayes was wrong about that.
You didn't tell him then.
No, I was like, Liam Hayes is a scary dude, and also we're out of time.
Out of time after an hour and a half. Yeah,
that proves the point. We move on here. Hi to all, particularly the good Dr. Arthur. First time, long time. Just wanted to get your thoughts on another Arthurite.
What even are ites? What is that?
Oh, the Arthurites.
It has a communist kind of overtone, which I feel is appropriate.
So. Yeah. I'm not sure what that is. What is that? What's the original of that?
I don't know.
Israelite, I suppose, of the song.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I've no idea.
Okay, carry on.
Right, who knows?
Okay, so from another Arthurite, first time, long time. Just wanted to get your thoughts on the hurling final weekend. I'm a Limerick. Never has anyone hated fandom so much. I'm a Limerick hurling fanatic for all my life, and the last few years have been heaven. However, I feel the hurling final weekend is not what it used to be. When I was growing up, hurling final weekend consisted of the Kilmacud Sevens on Saturday, staying up for the match. Who stays up for the match?
No.
The over 50s.
That's not part of it.
I'm still up and realise that I've missed up for the match, and then say, it's okay.
And then the excitement of a Sunday with TV coverage. Sorry, staying up. Oh yeah, I thought you meant staying up in Dublin.
Jesus.
Staying up for the match. It's not about 9 o'clock. Like,
Exactly.
I don't think you stay up for the match.
Well, maybe when you're a kid, like.
Yeah,
It
but
finishes around 11 though.
Well,
It's a lengthy show.
Maybe this guy just hasn't realised he's grown up.
I was just going to say, life's not as good as an adult. Maybe that's your issue here, Joe, in Limerick. Then the excitement of Sunday with TV coverage starting early and a big build-up followed by the minor final, Osquelga, with a big crowd in for the presentation, Jubilee team, all leading to the crescendo of the final itself. Nowadays, whether it's split season to blame or poor planning on the GA's part, there's no Kilmacud Sevens that weekend, no minor game. Jubilee team goes out an hour before throw-in in front of a couple of thousand people. Last year, most of the crowd didn't come in until 10 minutes before throw-in, like it was just any other match. Maybe I'm just getting grumpy as I head from my mid-30s. There you go, Joe. But I felt it was more of a buzz growing up, and there was more pageantry, and it was an unmissable weekend event. Please discuss. Love the segment. Thanks, Joe in Limerick. I would posit, first of all, and it applies to us all, I think 60% of Joe's problem is just
growing up.
Nostalgia.
It's not
growing up.
1994 or 96 and he was a
Life's
kid.
not as rich as you grow up. I think that is a big part of it.
Yeah.
But to his point, there is also a substantive fairness to saying it has lost. Maybe it is a post-COVID thing and different things going on, but it just has lost the sense of festival.
Well, 245 at the Jubilee is entirely wrong. That's the first thing they need to address. And a good few of the players from the last 2 seasons or so have now talked about this. And even Anthony Daly was saying last week that it felt like they're almost being pushed off the pitch after they got on there in front of more than a half-empty stadium. Because understandably, if there's only one game at half-3, you're unlikely to be in your seat at 245.
Yeah.
So the Jubilee team has been almost entirely forgotten about. Half-time is the right time for the teams to be coming out. That's a really easy fix straight away. I don't think that the minor finals are going to end up going in beforehand again. I think the GA have taken a fairly strong stance in this, that they don't want under 17 games to be on in Croke Park, and I actually think the last 2 years, the experience of both the game at Nolan Park between Offaly and Tipperary, which sold out the year before, and this year as a double header with the under 20, worked really well, and it meant that more people were able to get access to tickets. If your county was in the minor final, it was always a real scramble to try and get in and see it. So I think actually keeping them outside of the final makes sense, but I think they need something else to go before it, because that, to Joe's point, it's really weird that the TV coverage only starts, I think, at 2:30. BBC's started at 3. There's this kind of feeling of, here we go, a few minutes before the match, and then the match just gets underway. It's definitely lost some of the pageantry.
To that end, dear Arthur and the gang, says James in Cork.
These aren't real, are they?
They're 100% real.
What? Oh, good, okay.
Can't cross the road without meaning Arthur right these days.
Yeah.
I'd say you've attained cult status despite wanting anything but.
Yeah. Go on,
Arthur
anyway.
won't be here next week.
Would you ever think about a one-man show where you just talk?
Speak to the Arthurites.
Unscripted, like Tommy Tiernan did a few years ago. Anyway, dear Arthur and the gang, I hope this email finds you well. I recently listened to your chat about the need to have a curtain raiser before the... Did we talk about needing to have a curtain raiser?
I don't know.
Well, maybe, I don't think we did. Maybe
we
it's
talked about it yesterday, but I presume this email has come in before.
Oh, it could have been from yesterday. I didn't look at the date. It sparked an idea I've been contemplating since last year. I firmly believe the solution lies in bringing back the cherished Railway Cup. And so James and Cork goes on to, in reasonably lengthy detail, describe Railway Cup happenings. So, and you treat the players well, you put them up in a hotel, you make them very into it, and you have a semi-final potentially, and then at the final, and it's the curtain raiser. Excited to hear your thoughts, says James in Cork. Well, I suspect he's most excited to hear Arthur's thoughts, so why don't you get the ball rolling? Would you welcome the return of the Railway Cup?
To go ahead of the All-Ireland.
Yeah. A nice plus to it is, to Will's point, there's no like your minor teams in the final are very hard to get tickets. Nobody's that invested in their province, so it's like a nice bonus thing. That's one plus for it.
Yeah, I quite like the way it is at the minute. Like I'm not. I don't really think the All-Ireland final needs to change too much. It's kind of fine. I do the Jubilee team. That would be nice to give that more prominence. But beyond that, I'm quite happy to get in there 3:10, whatever it is, back out again and. After the trophy's been lifted, and go again on your way. I don't really think it needs to be a 4 or 5 hour day.
This is why you're beloved, You're dead right, really. What are we all moaning about here?
Well, the enjoyment's before and after with the people you're going with. Like, it's not about... I really don't think we need to be in there from 1, 2 o'clock in the day.
Do you know what? It's
nobody
funny.
is.
I've been there like a parrot for the last 24 hours saying, the stadium needs to be alive earlier. And he's just convinced me I'm just talking at my hat.
The TV coverage thing is interesting coming on at 2:30. There was a kind of a sense of like... It's All-Ireland Day. Where's the All-Ireland?
Yeah.
And it's
do you like that FA Cup final morning vibe?
Sort of, yeah. And I mean, and that's passé as well. People like every FA Cup final talks around, I remember when it used to come on at 11 o'clock in the morning. It hasn't been for 20 years. And, I don't think it needs to be that, but there's an element of, there's something, where be it like, put on a bloody documentary or have something in the morning, a live hit or something. Just have this sense of it being this big national day twice a year. Now week on week, unfortunately.
It's pretty hard, yeah. It makes it harder.
Yeah, it does. I think it makes.
Weeks.
I think it makes a big difference having it back to back weeks.
As an aside, by the way, FA Cup final day now has loads of programming again. Across the morning.
Does it? Yeah.
Oh yeah. If you want, if you want to jump in and have, here's what the dressing room's like and all that kind of stuff, they've leaned right back into it. So it's there if you want it.
BT revived it 2 years ago.
I think we could do with that, and I think the television audience in some ways are almost more important for this because, as Arthur says, you're going for maybe a pint or whatever the equivalent, not necessarily drinking, but like you're meeting your people and you're getting together and you're talking about the match. All that excitement is natural when you're a fan of one of the teams there, and you go in and you do the same afterwards. Like absolutely, I do think. Sorry, excuse me. The cost of living stuff, lads, and the lack of hotels and the price of everything is massively taken away. I used to go into town on the Saturday night before the All-Irelands regularly. Remember, like you'd always be like when Kerry were playing, especially, it was a great buzz around the place. I was out last Saturday night, completely unrelated, in town all evening. I swear to God, you'd see every 400 people might be wearing it. It was absolutely lashing, like, but it's like every 400 person might be wearing a Kerry hat or something like that. There was no it's All-Ireland final day buzz.
I had to take the same,
which there was about 10-15 years ago. It was a great night out in town Saturday night before a match.
Yeah.
So that's
I'm
what
sure
I'm thinking.
No, it's part of it.
I like the Railway Cup idea. The problem is, Joe, that it was exciting for about 50 of the 90-year history, and it really fizzled out towards the end. And there was this feeling that when they eventually kind of closed the doors on it in 2017, that nobody was really as interested in the Railway Cup as it was before. I think it had a love for a few generations, and it was really huge when players probably played quite short championship campaigns to maybe from weaker counties get an idea or get a chance to play in a bigger ground or get a chance to play alongside the very best from your province. I'm not sure if that romance is quite there for the Railway Cup anymore, but I think in the hurling particularly you could do it very neatly. I definitely wouldn't have semi-finals or games on the Saturday before the
Maybe you just take turns, or the two provinces that aren't involved in the football final do it. It's only going to be an exhibition match. It doesn't need that interest. It needs people sitting in their seats half an hour before the game,
Yeah.
and kind of getting into it as it goes on. No matter what happens, nobody's going to be in the ground at 1:30. If it's a minor final or a Railway Cup or even something else, it's always going to be played in front of nobody at the start, and then a bigger crowd as it develops.
It would just be for something to look at if you didn't want to be in a pub. Atmosphere builds slowly, which is always a nice thing, and then there's the novelty of, oh, there's Tony Kelly passing to Keane Lynch. Those two seem to combine pretty well. Of course, Limerick will be in a final.
Keane Lynch will be in the final a few times.
The only problem with that theory.
But I think a one-off exhibition wouldn't be any harm.
Okay, so no harm, and then sure, it's grand as it is.
It's fine.
Move the Jubilee team, though.
Why do we always need more? What is that? Why are we ruining the planet with that, you know?
That's like a very astute point.
There's no harm in making. I'm not being nationalistic here or anything like that. But
Here we go. Here we go.
I'm really not being. I swear to God, but I do have a pride in the fact that we have these unique occasions. There's 2 of them in a year. There's no reason that we can't make a bloody big deal of them. And ideally, honestly, and I'm saying this, it's not the case at the moment, whether you like it or not, but ideally in 10, 15 years, there are 4 dates. And we add Camogie and ladies football, and we have, maybe it's the 4 weeks in a row, and it's a festival of Croke Park finals and stuff like that. But I don't know. We don't seem to have any interest in doing that kind of thing. Everything seems to be just on its own as a one-off, you know.
Does anywhere do that?
Don't care.
Oh, okay. I was just kind of more looking for.
You know what I mean?
I was looking more for a template than a justification.
You obviously want to be the Super Bowl, where there's like a full day build up to it, and there's a lot
That'd
of
be
stuff
horrible.
around the stadium. Oh yeah, like we're probably a bit more humble than that.
We've got 4 minutes. I can't see any email here, which is 4 minutes.
So what do you want to talk about, Joe?
I don't know. There was the one about the interest in the World Cup, which was good, but I feel like that's a meaty
That's a bit
discussion
longer, I
point
would
for
say,
next
yes.
week.
Yeah.
There's the one about, do we listen to other podcasts in advance of...
Falling over the line here, I think is what they'd call it.
I think we could get into another topic, but we don't have enough time.
That's what I mean.
wrap up early.
There's so many good ones. No.
Did they mean
Wrap up
podcast
early.
specific to what we're going to be talking about?
Yeah.
There's one about the lack of suits in punditry. It's too long though.
Suits?
Stephen, it's too long, the email. It was a simple point.
Too many
Before
suits.
the All-Ireland final.
I'm saying there's not enough suits. It's gone far too trendy. The days of Hawk and Giles wearing a suit and tie, bring them back. Inoffensive shoes.
Would you not prefer him to wear something slightly more contemporary rather than the communion suits that we sometimes see in the covers?
No, he wants
That's the full regala.
a bit of something.
How do you feel about that, Joe? You're a suit man when you're on.
We all
Virgin.
wear suits. For the Women's Six Nations, I wore the same shirt and same tie just out of interest to see would anyone comment. Not a single person noticed.
That's interesting. You there conducting your little social experiments.
Yeah, not a single person. Same, and like just a navy tie at that.
My wife always notices what suits you're wearing and would comment on it. So, oh, Joe wore that 2 weeks ago there. Or
Well, he
whatever.
wore that every week for 6
Well,
weeks
I-
running.
No, but I think you'll wear a nice business suit. You don't necessarily go for the 3-piece. And
Oh God,
and all
no!
this sort of
Well, genuinely, we talked about it and we were like, let's have nobody ever talk about our clothes.
Yeah.
They're all just the most boring suits. So people have digested what we're wearing in about
So that
5
you don't
seconds
want
and
them
move on.
thinking about it.
It's nice. It's nice not to think about it. It's like being back wearing your school uniform again, but it's just like it's a distraction. Why do you? In 5 seconds.
I just don't understand where. Like, I mean, I feels nothing to do with any specific shows or anything like that, but it does feel like it's like, why is it a job that you would wear a suit for in
Yeah, I know.
2023?
I know.
There's
I know.
nothing kind of businessy about it. There's nothing whatever. And maybe people look. I think people do like it. I think people feel a bit more comfortable with people on TV wearing suits. I think there's something in that of us, being raised on the BBC and Gay
Yeah.
Byrne and whatnot. But
We didn't do it for Heineken Gems Cup. We sort of felt Ireland Six Nations, a day of national importance.
yeah,
What did you wear for the Hurling Cup then? Just a jumper.
that top.
Smart casual.
Yeah, okay. I think smart casual is fine as well if that's the style.
Will I read this fella's email because we're not
Go on.
coming back to this now.
Yeah, go
Joe and his
Oh,
disciples,
pretty
LTL FTE. I would like to know: have you noticed pundits and presenters relaxing formal wear, sporting a more casual attire these days? And if so, can you and the gang discuss? I was appalled to see Peter Canavan's apparel on the Sunday game. For those who didn't see, he was adorned in a matching green polo and chino number with canvas shoes his wife picked up for him in Debenhams. He probably wore it to Mass that morning. If they're telling Peter to leave the shirt at home, I've no doubt we'll see Shane Dowling wearing his Nike Air Max next. Am I alone when I say bring back the old school dress code, the days of Hook and Giles and Michael Lester kitted out in the classic suit? A la your Uncle John at the family wedding, father of 3, 30 years with the ESB, good tie, clean, polished, non-offensive, no-nonsense shoes. Sex it up with the colouring of a tie, fine. But no, now we're reduced to Micah Richards modernising suits with tight pants and trainers. Too often the bottom looks orphaned from the top half. This goes on for a long time.
We're out of time. 20 seconds left.
There are more relevant points there somewhere.
Anyway, he says he's not a fan. He mentions Sean Kavanagh and the Lee Keegans wearing daft stuff, and something about Louis Copeland and Joe Canning, and Arthur knows what I'm talking about, he says at one point.
No, he doesn't.
He does.
Another Arthurite. The way to finish.
He says Stephen Byrne from Wexford, living in Dubai, love the show, cheers.
Another expat as
Sorry,
well.
that was an abomination of a topic. We did that backwards to front. We're out of time.
And then cut off the last 5 minutes off the podcast.
Right. Will, thank you. Mick, thank you. Arthur, thank
Cheers.
you. We're talking about 2 in a row